Yes, Saurav, we can start. We are live now.
Good morning to all, and thank you for being here. I'm Saurav, General Manager Business Operations at Realization Technologies India. We at Realization are very proud of the work that we have done with our clients. For the past 30 years, Realization has helped over 500 clients across the world in accelerating project deliveries. In over 10,000 projects, clients have achieved cycle time improvements in the excess of 20%, and that has resulted in over $6 billion worth of additional profits. Today, we are honored to have Sanjeev Gupta, founder and global CEO of Realization, for conducting this webinar. To introduce Sanjeev, Sanjeev is a graduate from Delhi and Carnegie Mellon University. He is a Lifetime Achievement Award recipient for his contributions in the field of operations management and supply chain management. And he also holds several patents in this area. Welcome, Sanjeev.
Thank you, Saurabh. And
just one thing. Just one thing before we start. For the time being, everybody will be put on mute during the course of the discussion. And you can write down your questions if you want in the chat window, and Sanjeev would take them at the end of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. So instead of talking about the long-term impact of what COVID would have done to our economies and our behavior, I'm going to keep it very tactical in terms of what happens as soon as the shelter in place and the lockdowns that is happening in India, or the shelter in place that is happening in the US, as soon as this is over. What is the situation that companies, organizations that do projects will be facing, and how can technology be leveraged to handle that situation? And one example of an impact would be that certain projects have been paused. So for example, we have a customer in India, they're setting up a yarn plant, and normally that project takes about 13 months to complete. But since they are already our customer, they have consistently set up these plants in about 11-month time frame. So this 11-month project that is going on, about 5 months of that project has already been executed. And as soon as the lockdown is over, they would want to resume the project and get it completed and the yarn plant set up as quickly as possible, because they do not want to miss the peak demand for the textiles, which is in October to March timeframe. But what this pause has done is the lockdown is already about 45 days old. Maybe it will last another 15 days. And to restart their own organization as well as the supply chain that feeds into their project, it will probably take another 30 days. So they would have lost about 90 days from execution. In these 90 days, they are still incurring all the interest costs on the capital they have already invested, which is about 60% of the project's cost. And they're also incurring overheads, even though at a reduced rate. So this pause in execution is costing them about 4% increase in cost, but more importantly, 3 to 4 months of lost time that they would want to recover as soon as this is over. Another example is one of our customers is setting up solar power plants. And the demand for that electricity is known. They already have the contracts to sell the power as soon as they can get it online. So again, they have invested the capital, they are incurring the capital costs, and they would want to recover the lost time and get back on as soon as possible. There are still some other customers who face demand uncertainties. So another one of our customers is a chemical manufacturer. They supply materials that are used for downstream processing by other manufacturers to convert into the final product. And for them, they have their typical setup is to the tune of about 300 to 400 crores. They have invested the capital, some of the capital, but the project was not yet started. And as soon as this lockdown is over, they would not want to start the project immediately, because they do not know when the demand that they were projecting, when it would start materializing. There's so much uncertainty about uh, what is going to happen to the consumer demand or the final product demand. So for them, the important thing is not to start as soon as possible and finish the project as soon as possible, but their desire is, let's delay the start of the project as much as possible and still finish it faster. So this would be another example of uh, the tactical impact of this COVID lockdown. And finally, all the customers are facing reduced resource density. So the reduced resource density, whether it's in the back office or in functions like supply chain management, finance, engineering, purchasing, etc., where it's clear to them that they would have to reduce the number of people that can work in the office. They have a desire to reduce the number of people working in the office so that they can maintain the social distance. Yet the work that needs to happen on the project still needs to be accomplished. The project still needs to be managed. So they have to achieve more, manage more with fewer resources. Or even on the front lines when construction is going on or erection of equipment is going on, if social distancing measures are enforced, then organizations will still have to get the projects done. The amount of space is limited. So ultimately, they will have to reduce the number of resources on the project. But ideally, they would not want to slow the projects down. So how do you achieve more with less? And so these challenges are not new. In all projects, we want to finish projects as soon as possible. We want to do more with less. But to recover from this COVID lockdown, the situation becomes a little bit urgent. And at some level, all of us who are in the world of projects know what is required to improve project delivery. In every project, there are multiple stakeholders within the organization and across organizations. So the belief is that if everyone operated from a single source of truth, somehow the projects would magically get done faster. And there is some truth to it, but not completely. And this is what I will cover later on. The second belief is that projects are dynamic. Conditions on the ground keep changing. And if we can react, if we can get that information in real time in terms of where the delays are happening or what was the progress, is that we are acting on the latest information, we are somehow going to be able to make better decisions. And through those better decisions, we can get the projects done faster. And finally, making the decisions not after the fact, but before the fact. Where does all this intuition come from? So I'm going to use the analogy of Google Maps. Right? So if we look at Google Maps, when you use Google Maps to get from point A to point B, it is not just user convenience. It's not just that as a user, now you have the latest information and you have this comfort of knowing where you are going. But it is also that Google Maps is telling you where are the bottlenecks downstream. And more than that, it is allowing you to take the smartest route. It's recommending which route to take. And for example, if you are you have to get to a meeting, a very important meeting, and the meeting is going to start at 12 p.m. and you are stuck in traffic and you are about half a kilometer away and you are sitting in your Uber and you think that, but what the GPS is telling you or the Google Maps is telling you is going to take the Uber 15 minutes to get there. But if you were to get out of the cab and just walk, you might get there in 5 minutes. So it presents you those options and those smart options to get from point A to point B. So the point here being that using this information intelligently is not just about giving comfort to people, not just about user convenience where they have information on their fingertips, is also allowing them to save time and get from point A to point B in a more predictable fashion. At the same time, and this is an important point, that a lot of times what information technology for the last 60 years, information technology has been sold on the premise that if we have a single source of truth and if we have real-time data, then somehow magically our organization will improve. This was the mainframe revolution in the 60s. Then later on, you have formal systems come in place like MRP systems, which then ERP systems. but something is missing in those systems. Just having more and more information, what organizations normally find is to manage all this information, they're creating a large department to just manage this data and to manage this information, but probably managerial decision making is not improving. So let's look at what is happening in Google Maps, because there is a very perfect analogy to what happens in projects or to organizations in general. The point is that if Google Maps told you the latest information about where you are, it also told you where the traffic jams are in the future, but it did not have this routing algorithms that work in real time to analyze how fast the traffic is moving, putting all that information together, and then recommending to you, number one, what is the expected arrival time? Number two, what is the best route to take? And number three, presenting you options in terms of whether to walk or to stay in your car. Then all this real-time data would be pretty useless. All the power of real-time data would be lost if you did not have real-time routing algorithms. Right? Let's just do a Gedunken experiment. What if we did not have real-time routing? What will be happening? So this is what will be happening. You will have a driver, you will have this real-time data coming in, but then you will need your passengers to be constantly analyzing all this information and try to process this information to give direction to the driver. And even if you did that, so you will have more data. To process this data, you need more people, which is what happens, by the way, in project organizations. You start putting these project management systems in place, they start getting more data. To get the data, you need more people. To chase after people. To process the data, you need more people. But still, you will not get the information in real time. So the power of real-time data, real-time information is wasted unless you have this real-time routing algorithms in Google Maps. And the question to ponder for all of us is, are projects any different? Same situation. Projects are complex. You have many different resources working on different parts of the projects. You have multiple stakeholders, and you have a very dynamic situation. And if you just had real-time data, but you kept your current planning and scheduling methods in place, where this real-time data goes to a project management office, where planners have to redo the project plans, analyze the information, and it takes about 2 to 3 days minimum, but sometimes about a week to process all this information. As a result of that, you can really process all this real-time data and convert into a new plan and a schedule only about once every 2 weeks or once every month, or sometimes even once every quarter. Then the power of all that real-time data, whether it is using drones, mobile phones, WhatsApp, messages, anything that you have in terms of real-time data, all that power is getting lost if you continue to rely on manual planning and scheduling. Right? The situation is no different than having a driver having to rely on passengers to process the information, and still the information cannot be processed, and you still end up making decisions that are backward looking, not forward looking. Right? And of course, what this real-time planning and scheduling should do is, without the involvement of people or with minimal involvement of people, it should accommodate the delays. It should accommodate the delays intelligently. So that it's not just telling you because a delay happened, the project will be delayed. It should accommodate the delays in a manner where it can say, hey, even though delays have happened, we can recover. It should also allow the changes in the plans to happen, because a lot of times in projects, you are changing the nature of the work. You are changing the order of the task in which sequence you perform the tasks. And most importantly, for resources that are working on the projects, it should be able to tell them what tasks they should work on first. Right? So this is, without this real-time planning and scheduling system that has this smartness inside it, all the power of real-time data, whether using the mobile platforms or drones, and whether even if you put all this information on one platform, let's say you collect all your information from your ERP systems, your engineering systems, your daily progress reporting system, and you put that in one platform. But if you do not have real-time planning and scheduling, all you have created is more overhead in terms of number of people that you need in your project management office. And you have gained not much in terms of the decisions you make on projects. And you still have a situation where managers feel like they're drowning in data, but they still continuously get surprised about delays in projects. So our software, and this is the technology that we are offering, which we have developed over time, in the trenches, working in the trenches on about 10,000 projects, understanding what really happens in projects. How do you automate this planning and scheduling? How do you make it real time so that it is giving you the good information? What kind of information executives need? What kind of information project managers need? What kind of information people on the front line need? So that is the software that we have developed. So one of the examples we have is a company called Aarti Industries. So they manufacture chemicals. And this is a quote from their CMD. And Saurabh, can you talk a little bit about what Aarti Industries have been able to achieve using the smart project delivery
Yeah,
system?
yeah. Aarti Industries were embarking on a approximately rupees 3,000 crore worth of brownfield and greenfield expansion projects, and they were mainly focused on operations. So they had a very lean management team. And in the past 2 years, they've already executed over 1,800 crores worth of projects. And in fact, they have been adding more and more investments continuously during this period. There is approximately in the next 2 years, they have complete visibility of any investment that is set to get executed over the next 2 years, which is approximately another 2,000 crores.
Did they achieve any improvement in the rate of execution?
Yeah, so they had a very lean management team before, and the volume of investment was very low. This was like a huge increase in the amount of investment that they started from this point in
Mhm.
time. So the jump in with the lean management team, the jump in investment was around 10 folds, and
So they're
being able
managing
to
a tenfold
execute
volume of projects. And are the
volume
projects
of
getting
projects.
done
Yes,
faster?
and the projects. I'm sorry.
Are the projects getting done faster?
Yes, the projects are getting done. So the extension of this quote was that the improvement is in the tune of 100%.
100% improvement.
The
Okay.
improvement in speed. Yes.
Okay. So they're executing projects in half the time.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Right. And in projects, I want to point out one more thing. So Google Maps is a very good example of what can be achieved and what has been achieved. So let's look at Google Maps. What happens in Google Maps? When Google Maps is running, it is giving instructions to every driver, but every driver is acting in a selfish way. And this is what I mean by that. It is going to have, Google Maps is going to tell if there are 1,000 drivers on the road, it's going to tell all the 1,000 drivers to take route A versus route B. But if every driver takes route A, now you have shifted the bottleneck from route B to route A, right? So in the big scheme of things, the benefit of Google Maps is being underutilized, is not being fully achieved because every driver is making independent decisions. What if all these decisions were more coordinated? What if there are 10,000 drivers on the road, Google Maps is telling half the drivers to take route A and half the drivers to take route B, and the drivers are following the instructions. Moreover, what if Google Maps is not only telling you what route to take, it's also telling certain drivers what is the best time to leave home, and they follow those instructions? What if the decisions about when to leave are also coordinated, where you know which which meetings are more important, which meetings can be postponed a little bit? So what you will have in that situation is, if the traffic starts flowing, instead of at 10 kilometers an hour, if the traffic falls at 60 kilometers an hour, suddenly you have increased the throughput of traffic by 6 times. You have eliminated all traffic jams, and you have allowed every driver to get from point A to point B much faster. And that is the promise in projects. That is really where the power of our system comes. When all the stakeholders in an organization are working to the common plan and schedules, common recommendations from the software. And not only in an organization, but even across organizations. So what happens is when engineering is working, when the suppliers are working, when the erection teams are getting ready for work on site, they are working on a forward-looking basis in a way where all the work would arrive to the integration point and the work would continue to flow without having to wait, right? So the power of not just having a single source of truth, but actually having coordinated decision making across across a project, which means across different enterprises or stakeholders within a project, or even across multiple projects. Where, for example, again, the example of Larsen and Toubro heavy engineering division. So the software is not only telling you what is good for a project, it's also telling you what is the best time to start the next project. Therefore, when you are doing this fabrication of complicated machinery, you are eliminating all the traffic jams that happen inside the factory. Or within a project, if you have the same engineering teams that have to do engineering for different subsystems. So instead of starting all the work streams, the software is telling you what are the first set of work streams to start, then the next one and the next one. And as a result of that, what you get is instead of traffic jams in the project, you get a smooth flow of traffic from point A to point B. And that is how you can get 20, 30, 40% improvement in project velocity. Saurav, are there any other examples, with the client name that we can share?
Yeah, so one example is from L&T Heavy Engineering Division. They were setting up a shipyard in the coast of Chennai. And the biggest challenge was that their critical supplies were late by about 9 months, and they had a very, very ambitious target. In spite of the delay of 9 months on the critical supplies, they finally ended up with a delay of only 4 months in the entire project. So basically, they recovered the last 5 months in the last 14 months of the project. So this is one example. Then there was Vardhaman Steel, who was embarking on a brownfield expansion in their steel plant while live operations were going on. And they had to also ensure 2 shutdowns that could not be even late by a day because of the supply commitments, and come up with the new line in time as well. So they completed both the shutdowns a day earlier, and they completed the project 1.5 months before what was the due date. And there are many more, which you can obviously visit and see in our website.
Okay. And sort of one of the questions I see is how is the software useful in engineering and construction sector? So this question is from Mr. Kaushik Paul.
Yeah.
So can you talk about kind of 2 things? One is examples of engineering and construction projects, and exactly what does the software do? Is it helpful in the engineering phase, construction phase? What phases of the projects it is useful in?
Yeah, so typically the engineering teams are common to multiple projects, and the construction teams are sort of dedicated to the projects in the engineering construction sector. So as you explained, that for the engineering team, knowing the right amount of work to be done at any point in time for each and every project ensures faster supply of designs to the site, which is always a challenge because work keeps getting stuck due to engineering. So one of the examples would be Kalpataru Power. We had worked with them in delivering 5 projects sitting in India that were taking place in Africa. So the engineering team was sitting here, and the teams were execution teams were in Africa, and they achieved a cash flow improvement of around 40% across the 4 projects.
Okay. All right. And is there certain characteristics where the software is more useful versus not useful? So actually, let me address that point. So in the engineering and construction projects, you can have some very simple projects, very linear, simple projects. So over there, the software becomes more useful if you have a portfolio of projects going on. If you're just
Yes.
talking about the software being used on a single small project or very
Yeah.
linear project, you can probably manage it by hand on a spreadsheet. But the
Yes.
power of this real-time planning and scheduling comes into play. The higher the complexity, the more the value of the software.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
For
one more.
example, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. For example, road projects. If you just take a single project of, let's say, a 50-kilometer road, probably yes, that can be done on spreadsheets.
Yeah.
But if
Okay.
you have multiple of such projects with all approvals getting stuck in different projects, yes, then it becomes a complex problem.
Then another question from Kumar here is, what or how is your software different from MS Project or Primavera? So the way I would characterize it is that MS Project and Primavera are akin to, so I don't know, if Kumar, how old are you? But you used to have these paper maps a long time ago. Then after paper maps, there was something called MapQuest, which would allow you to chart your route from point A to point B, but you had to do it manually. But what Google Maps does is it is processing the information in real time with real time routing. So whatever software does is, unlike Microsoft Project and Primavera, where it takes a lot of time and an army of people to create plans initially, and then to keep plans up to date, and to process the updates that you get from the field to convert that into useful management information. All that is eliminated with our software. So it is an automated real-time planning and scheduling system that allows the PMO office to disengage from low value added clerical activities of just manipulating plans to more value added activities of, when the software tells what is going to happen to the project, what are the best options, then they can do more value added things on top. So really, that is the main difference. Microsoft Project and Primavera, the way I would say it, is generation one of the software. Then on top of that, you had these mobile technologies, platforms, etc. There's software like Wrench that are available today that provide you real-time data, but no, they still use Microsoft Project and Primavera for planning and scheduling. So you can think of that as generation 1.5. And what we are offering is generation 3, if you will, of project planning and scheduling. The next question here is, the software that you are mentioning, is it proprietary software? And in case of construction projects, do we employ technologies like BIM? So yes, it is a proprietary software. And Saurav, can you address the BIM thing, the BIM question? Hello, Saurav.
Yeah. So BIM, or there are many other modeling softwares, and they have their own output. So we can take data from them and we can analyze them. And the system analyzes lot of input data. It can be from BIM, it can be from your SAP system, it can be from your engineering systems, it can be from contractor submissions. So we can take that information. So for the real-time data part can come from any system.
So BIM, what kind of information would BIM system supply for planning and scheduling?
Typically what has been completed. BIM visualizes the entire construction in a 3D mode, and it keeps showing the level of completion. So we can take the completion data from the system, and that is again the real-time data part, which can come in from any system.
Yeah, and I think the more powerful use of BIM is once you have visualization of what is happening to the project, and the software tells you that based on the latest information, when we did the planning and scheduling, the software did the planning and scheduling, it tells you what the expected completion date is and what are the best options available. BIM can be used to explore those options.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then
it can become more powerful.
Yeah. Then another question from Kumar here is, what key inputs to the project personnel input to enable such real-time assessment? Great question. So I'll talk about what they input and what they don't have to input anymore. So the input that you are going to get is your daily progress reports, which are more and more getting automated, but still someone has to put that information in. But now it doesn't require the PMO staff in between. Our software can take directly the daily progress reports, and without any interpretation, it can process that information all the way to the end. Then you have similarly information from supply chain management systems or engineering systems, which is just telling you what is happening with the orders that you have placed or what is happening with the engineering work. So really a lot of the input process gets streamlined because the software is able to analyze the information at the lowest level of detail and all the way up to the project. So this is one. The second thing is, in traditional way of doing things, not only do you have to input the information, but you also have to massage the project plans a lot. Because the time when you create the project plans in the beginning, you have to do a lot of manual planning and scheduling in terms of your start dates, earlier start dates, latest start dates, milestone that you have to put in to force the schedule to behave in a certain way. With our software, all that data input and manual manipulation goes away. So it's very directional. So I don't have, I cannot give you perfect quantitative answers, but I would say the amount of data manipulation and data input effort that you have goes down by a factor of 2 to 4. And it goes directly to the front lines. It goes directly into you can pick up the information directly from the system that are tracking the progress. And the rest of the work is done by the software. There's a question from Arun Kumar Shambhu. In case of construction project, office campus, how quickly can your services be deployed? The project is already 40% complete, but held back due to lockdown. So Saurabh, can you give Arun Kumar Shambhu an example of a project where we entered midstream and what we were able to do?
So in terms of the system going live, it does not take more than 7 days. And
So
over
in
the
7 days,
next,
you can set up this system, okay?
yeah. So if you start using the system, the time it takes to set up the system with your plan, it is not more than 7 days. For a project, let's say of the size of approximately 500 crores and thereabouts.
Okay. And are there examples
For
where you have entered the project midstream? Can you give those examples?
Yeah, so for NTPC, we worked with them for the thermal power plant project at Khargone. So we entered at the time when hydro test was already done, which is one of the major milestones. And due to the pressure of doing the hydro test, some of the work for the subsequent important milestones like boiler light up and commissioning, they had been lagging behind. So we entered at that stage. So which is approximately around 2 years into the project.
Okay.
More
and how
than 2
about
years actually,
any
close to 3
example
years into the project.
Vibgyor or something where they're setting up schools, which I think is more going to be like setting up office campuses.
Yeah, for Vibgyor, we had entered, so they had to do 6 school projects. And we had entered at a time when they were in progress, 3 of them were in progress for about 3 months. So the completion percentage was not 40, it was less than that. It was somewhere around 10% for 3 of the projects. For the remaining 3, they had just started. So this was for school projects.
Yeah. So Navneet, can you take down an action and for Arun Kumar, can you send him the Vibgyor case study?
Sure, Sanjeev, I'll send it across to him.
Okay. And for Prem Kumar, the question is, does your software take care of requirements for both contractor and client together or independent of it? And then he has another follow-up question after that. So I'm trying to understand the question. Saurabh, so if the question is that, can the software have an integrated plan for the contractor and the client together? If that is the question, the answer is yes. So it's a web-based system where you have multiple parties adhering to a common plan. And we will get into that detail in a subsequent webinar if required, where we are able to create a master plan which is shared, but the details can be populated by the individual parties and only they have visibility of those details. And the software can process all that information together. I hope I am interpreting your question correctly, Prem Kumar, and answering it properly. If not, can you give the mic to Prem Kumar Navneet, and maybe he can ask the question?
Sure, I'm giving access to him. Sanjeev, I don't have the access. Can you go to the attendees list and there you can allow Prem Kumar to have his question verbalized?
Sure, sure. Allowed to talk, okay?
Yeah.
So Prem, you are online in case you want to ask. If I have not answered your question properly, you can ask the question.
Yeah, first of all, a very good morning, Mr. Sanjeev, for this wonderful session, giving this opportunity to hear out your experiences on this new software, what you have developed. The question, what I have asked that this, whatever the suggestion you are giving based on the input provided by the contractor, that might have some cost and time implication to implement all those actions. And
Yes.
being a contractor, he will always look at the client that what percentage of that is getting compensated. So to implement any action post COVID, in this case, in this scenario, what you are trying to explain here, then that has to be fully in agreement or alignment with the client and
Great.
contractor together.
Great.
The
Great.
cost sharing has to be also agreed in principle, then only any action will be initiated. So
Thank you.
that's the question I have asked this, and I'm expecting your.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. So we have all these examples even in the US Navy working here, where you have the US Navy who is the customer, then there are contractors and subcontractors. So to fully utilize the power of this technology, you need to align the incentives also at some level, right? Because otherwise you create a condition where project will get done faster, but my local costs will increase. So what do I gain out of it, right? So unfortunately, I don't have a standard answer because I don't know the exact situation for what this vendor is doing, but to leverage the planning and scheduling optimization, sometimes you have to figure out if the incentives, financial incentives, have to be realigned.
Because in my professional experience, I have come through such situation wherein so-called some expert consultant, project consultant, being inducted in the project, and where the client and contractor both have agreed in principle, because any action what is being generated based on this consultant, that will have the repercussion on both the party, and this agreement is essentially required before implementing those actions. So
That
that's
is
the
correct.
reason I'm asking.
No,
And
that's very.
yeah, my second question is that does your software also taking care of the probability of schedule success? Because until unless that schedule itself is a question mark, many times many of the contractor does not perform this schedule risk assessment at the beginning of project, and later on they are keep revising the baseline schedule since they are unable to meet that. So does that aspect also being taken care in your software, or
Yeah, so I will explain. I will talk about that. And but just to complete the thought on the first question, our the Saurav's team, they also have a best practices team. So for a lot of our customers like Trident or Vardhaman or Vidyo that I talked about, or Aarti Industries, they actually, when we get engaged on a long-term basis, we do work with the client and their major contractors on the very front end to align everyone's interest. Now, having put that question on the side, in terms of schedule slippage, etc., so you are absolutely right. Right? If I assume that everything will happen exactly as planned, and if I assume that the optimal schedule that I'm giving you, you can follow it and complete the project on time, then you are kind of living in a delusion, because what is optimal today might not be optimal tomorrow. So whatever software has, and you have the old approach of dealing with this where you do Monte Carlo simulations, etc. But that is not helpful in the real world, right? Because it's just saying the probability of a project getting done in 10 months is X and in 8 months is Y. But what does that do to your daily scheduling process, right? That doesn't help you. So whatever software has is it uses, and this is something we can probably get into a more detailed webinar, where it uses this concept of intelligent float management, because there's always some float in projects, and the problem is that float kind of gets wasted because it is manually manipulated, etc. We have this concept of intelligent float management that allows you. So let me talk about the endpoint. The endpoint is that in my project, if my critical path gets delayed, the project should get delayed. But if my non-critical path gets delayed, ideally, the project should not get delayed. And the answer to that is intelligent float management. So there is an aspect in our algorithms of this intelligent float management. And we'll be happy to get into details of that. We can do that either one-on-one with you, or we can do it in a public webinar.
The last question with regard to the same, does your software also take care of earned value management in the process of suggesting some solution?
Yes. So there are two things that I think you are asking. One is earned value management just as a reporting metric. And the second is even cash flow optimization, if I'm understanding the gist of your question.
Yeah, if you are able to address this earned value management, probably that all automatically take care of cash management, to my understanding.
Yes. So, so Saurav, can you talk about earned value management? Again, this is a very detailed question. So I'll give you the short answer. The short answer is yes. And um, again, is a short answer, but we'll have to get into details. The way we integrate with earned value management, it ends up actually creating an incentive for all the parties to do the right things. And what do I mean by the right thing? In earned value management, one of the challenges you have is if you get stuck, there's always an incentive for you to start working on something that is not critical to start earning value. So you earn value, but you don't move the project forward. So the way we integrate earned value management with our planning and scheduling is an intelligent way where shooting for higher earned value management also moves the project faster towards the end and also optimizes your cash flow. And Saurabh, this is something that maybe with Prem we can explain in one-on-one basis, or Navneet, we can organize a webinar on just this subject.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And let's see any other questions.
Sanjeev, we have more questions on the question and answer panel, if you can see those.
I can see on the chat. Okay, can you read the questions, Navneet? I cannot see the question and answer panel, sorry.
All right, I'll read it for you. There's a question from Mr. Akshay Agarwal. Do our client also need to have the software for synchronization on project schedule and planning? Presently, we are doing on MS Excel, MS Project. So more on the same line, like if the same software can be used for the contractors.
Yes. So Saurav, you want to give an example there? Hello, Saurav.
No, so they don't need to have the software. I think you already had explained once, but I'll elaborate on it. So everybody, whoever is a stakeholder in the project is a part of the software, but they don't need to have them in their system. You can selectively share a part of those schedules that the respective corresponding people need to follow, and they would only have access to that much, their own part of their schedule.
Yeah. So if the question is that do we need to install separate software? So the answer is it's a web-based system. And if you have subcontractors involved, they get access to their part of the project from your own project, and it's up to you to give them access. And in that access, they will get the kind of information that you get, and they can also add their own details without making those details visible to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Navneet?
Okay. Okay, we have one question from Mr. AP Singh. He is asking, should we not start shutdown project with full kitting in place? If say shutdown is of 10 days instead of looking into when it should arrive.
Great question. Great question. So that's a great question, right? So the analogy to that would be that even with Google Maps, it's better if you start with your tank full enough so that you don't have to stop on the way and disturb the traffic. So the answer is yes. You start the shutdown projects, and since the projects are of such short duration, you want all the requisite materials or drawings or other inputs that you need from the outside world to be available before you start the project, because any small delay will end up disrupting your flow of the project. At the same time, doing this full kitting itself is a project. So there is one of our customers is CNAT in Spain, which is Central Nuclear Authority. So they do shutdown projects. To get ready for the shutdown, it takes about 6 to 9 months of engineering, which itself is a project. So in the past, what would be happening is engineering would be half done and you would start the shutdown project. As a result of this, what comes out on the other end is either you have delays in execution or you have projects that are accomplished with less than full scope. But what they did was they used our system to start managing the engineering portion, which is kind of a full kitting for the shutdown project. Navneet?
Okay, Sanjeev. We have one question from Mr. Surender Mehra. He is asking how real-time data is captured in your system.
Great, great. So a couple of things. One is nowadays you already have your supply chain management systems like SAP or something else that you will have, which is capturing the real-time information about your supply chain. Similarly, you have engineering systems which are capturing information about what is happening with the engineering work. So to the extent that information is available, we import it from the other systems. But you also have daily progress reporting that goes on for which normally people use spreadsheets, a disparate set of spreadsheets today. So what we have is we have our own daily progress reporting system, which can be formatted and customized to your requirements. And instead of dealing with this spreadsheet nightmare, it's all in a nice database where you don't have to manage multiple spreadsheets. So bottom line, the progress reporting can be captured directly into our system, or it can be imported from other systems if it is available.
Yeah. The next question is from Mr. Yakesh. I think this has been explained as a part of the previous question. What type of data input is required for the software? So I suggest Mr. Yakesh, if your question is already not answered, you can just raise your hand or put it in a different way.
Or you can take it offline with him.
Yeah, we can take it offline.
Okay.
Mr. James Masia, he is asking, how about its integration compatibility with Autodesk, Revit, and other construction-related software?
Great, great question. So there are two things, right? So one is planning and scheduling, and one is the information that engineers and other people need to execute their work. So from our perspective, information that is contained in Autodesk, whether it's the drawings or other, lists that might be there, those are the information that engineers need. So what happens is the integration over there is like our software tells the engineer what task to work on, and from there you can hyperlink into the other systems, other information that they need to perform their task. So whether it's a document management system or whether it is some other system, you can hyperlink into those SAP system also. So once I understand what tasks need to be done, maybe I need to go into SAP and actually place the purchase order for it. So one is an input that goes into the system to help us make planning and scheduling decisions. The second type of information is once you have a plan and a schedule, then any additional information you need to execute those decisions. So that integration can also be done.
All right. We have a question coming from Mr. Girish, and he is asking what project management technique is used in the software. For example, CPM, PERT, Lean, or just in time. Do the software have options to analyze the delay based on the different logics?
Yes. So the software, so I'll start with this last part first and go backwards. So the software is analyzing these options before it is making these recommendations to you. Now, in terms of the methodologies or the practices that it uses, right? So there is the fundamental methodology of all project management at the end of the day. If you're not dealing with volume of work issues, if you're dealing with a project network, it's got to be critical path. But what we have done is we have made three advancements to critical path. One is how do you do critical path analysis if you have multiple projects going on? The second part of the critical path analysis is how do you automate the float management and make it intelligent so that the critical path is not changing all the time in execution. And the third part is, and this is again a detail that will need to be covered, if you apply a critical path technique to a very detailed project network, you get wrong results. So in NTPC, for example, they were applying critical path to a 100,000 task network, and that gives them wrong results. So what we have is we have a smart planning module which tiers your plan. So we'll not get into details, but really what it does is it applies critical path at the right level, and it subordinates the lower level decisions to the critical path decisions at the higher level. Right? So it is some function of critical path. Now in terms of lean, etc., right? So lean has this concept. One of the examples of lean, one of the best practices in lean is what was being mentioned to as full kitting early, where readiness before you start executing, right? So we have functionality in the software that allows you to uh, put in place those lean practices.
Okay.
Okay. And if, by the way, if I have not answered your question properly, feel free to write back to us and we will address it one on one.
Okay. The next question is coming up from Mr. Sanyam Gandhi. He is asking, does your software keeps the record of material used and material in stock left along with project planning?
Great. So the answer is no. We rely on the supply chain management systems to do that.
Okay. I think we have the last question on the Q&A section right now. This is from Mr. Vineet Sharma. He is asking, what if the project gets delayed despite using the software? Are there any financial obligations for the same from your end? Any penalties?
Great point. So so the answer is no, there are no financial penalties to us, but here is the but. We do take incentive based contracts where we will we will tie 80% of our fees, up to 80% of our fees, to you actually getting the project results. So this is what happens in projects, right? The role of the software is to give you recommendations. Now, to get those recommendations right, the setup of the software is right. So that is within our control, so that we do. As someone else was mentioning earlier, that sometimes the incentives have to be aligned. So that is in your control, and we can provide you best practices, recommendations, etc. towards that. Sometimes, like in the Larsen and Toubro shipyard project, when there was this delay of critical material, where the steel was held on the sea for about 8 months, so nothing could have been done. The best we could have done was to recover as much as possible from that delay. So there are things that will happen in projects which are beyond the normal range of uncertainty that will delay the project. So there are lots of complicating factors, but we do offer, uh, in addition to the software, we do provide consulting contracts where we will tie a significant part of our fees to you getting the project done in a timely
Okay. I I guess we have one more question from Mr. Kaushik Paul. He is asking, what is the expected limitations of this software?
Great, great question. Great question. So I think the limitations I would say are twofold. One is, and that is why we focus a lot on the engineering and construction sector, because people are used to the idea of formal planning and scheduling. So if you go into a lot of software development environment, for example, where organizations don't even believe in formal planning and scheduling, they want to just create a list of items and get the project started without creating a project plan. So if you don't believe in project planning and scheduling, or if you are averse to creating project plans, then the software will not work. I think the second major limitation in terms of the software not performing is again around that if your scheduling decisions are optimal for the project but suboptimal for certain parties, then if you don't align the incentives of those parties, then again you will not get the best results. On the other side, the limitation is what I talked about in the beginning, that if you have very simple project, one or two projects, right, then you can probably achieve the same results by managing things on a spreadsheet. You can still do real time management there. So the more the complexity, the more the value of the software. Okay.
All right, Sanjeev, I think we have covered the questions here.
Okay. So just make sure that the case studies, etc., are sent and follow-ups are scheduled. And what is the next step here?
Yeah, sorry if you can please.
So yeah, so one is we are going to do a follow-up webinar on the actual software in about 7 days time. So we'll obviously send out the invites to you so that you can just see how this real-time scheduling works, and maybe a lot of questions around how it integrates with other systems, and what is the type of data that needs to come in, and who if there are other stakeholders, how are they exposed to the software. All these questions can be answered in that session. We'll also send the material to the case studies and the material on the questions that we have already answered and we have discussed. And apart from that, if there is any opportunity to do a one-on-one with any of you on specifically your projects and your project environments, then we would be happy to do that.
Okay. Okay. So thanks, Navneet, for organizing this. Thanks, Saurav, and thanks everyone for attending. I know it's a
Thank you all.
valuable time that you took out from your calendars.
Yeah, you can, for any other assistance, you can write us at infoindia@realization.com, and I'll be back to you with a follow-up email. Yeah, so thanks for your time, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sanjeev.